The smell of roasted chicken filled the air as we sat down to dinner that evening. I had spent the entire afternoon preparing the meal, hoping to surprise her with something special. It wasn't anything extravagant, just a simple dinner, the kind of dinner you have after a long week, when you're both finally free from the usual grind. I had set the table, lit the candles, and poured the wine. The soft glow from the candles reflected off her face as she smiled at me, but there was something different about her that night. I couldn't quite put my finger on it, but there was an unmistakable distance in her eyes, something that hadn't been there before. She looked at me, her lips curling into that warm smile she always wore, the one I had come to love. "I'm going to be a bit late tonight," she said casually. As she pushed the food around on her plate, her eyes not meeting mine. "I'm meeting with some friends after dinner." The way she said it, so offhandedly, it didn't sit right with me. We had talked about this evening. It had been planned for days. I thought this was supposed to be our time, but as she said it, I felt the hair on the back of my neck stand up. A cold, unsettling feeling crept down my spine. It wasn't the first time she'd said something like that, but there was something about her tone tonight, something that made my stomach twist. "Friends?" I asked, trying to sound casual, but I couldn't shake the feeling in my gut. "Who exactly are you meeting?" She paused for a moment, her fork halfway to her mouth. There was a brief hesitation, and for a second, I wondered if she was thinking of telling me the truth. But she didn't. Instead, she smiled, her eyes briefly meeting mine before she looked away again. "Just some of the girls from work, nothing special." Her words were so effortless, as if nothing was out of the ordinary. But I wasn't convinced. I had seen the way she acted when she talked about her work friends. There was always a certain energy in her voice, a spark that was unmistakable. But tonight, she seemed distracted. She wasn't the same, and neither was I. I could feel it, this creeping sense of unease, the realization that something wasn't right. I could tell she was hiding something from me. I tried to shake the feeling off, telling myself I was being paranoid, but the doubt lingered. It always does, doesn't it? You start questioning little things. It's the way they look at their phone when they think you're not looking, or how they avoid making eye contact. I knew I couldn't let it go. This was my wife, the woman I trusted above all else, and something felt off. I watched as she picked at her food, her mind clearly elsewhere. I had always known when she wasn't fully present with me, but tonight, it was almost as if I wasn't even there. She seemed lost in thought, her fingers tracing the edge of her glass as she stared out the window. The silence between us grew, heavy and thick, until I couldn't take it anymore. "We don't have to do this tonight," I said, trying to break the tension. "If you'd rather stay home, we can skip it. It's not a big deal." I wanted to believe that she would say yes, that she would sit down with me, take my hand, and tell me that she wanted to be with me just as much as I wanted to be with her. But instead, she shook her head, her lips curving into a small, almost pitying smile. "No, it's fine," she said softly. "You know I love you. I just need some space sometimes, that's all." I nodded, not fully convinced by her words. I knew her well enough to understand when she needed space, but tonight was different. There was something hidden in the way she spoke, the way she couldn't meet my eyes. It was as if she were trying to convince me, convince herself, perhaps, that everything was fine, but the truth was, I wasn't buying it. I couldn't. As the evening wore on, I couldn't help but feel like I was losing her, slipping further and further away from her. She finished her dinner quickly, barely making a dent in her plate, before excusing herself to get ready. I watched her leave the room, her footsteps light but hurried, as if she couldn't get away from me fast enough. I stared at the half-empty table, the flickering candlelight casting long shadows over the room. The silence was deafening now. I felt like I was the only one left in the house, the weight of the uncertainty pressing down on me, suffocating me. I had always been able to read her, to know when something was wrong, but tonight she was a stranger to me, a stranger wearing the face of the woman I loved. I sat there for a while longer, my thoughts racing. The questions kept flooding in. Why was she so distant? Why had she lied? I knew that feeling, knew it all too well. I'd been down this road before, and I had always trusted her. But tonight everything was different. My gut told me something was happening, something I wasn't ready to face. The sound of her footsteps echoed from upstairs. Now, when I watched as she came down the stairs, dressed in something casual, but somehow too casual, a little too revealing. The way she stood there by the door, waiting for me to say something, waiting for me to ask her where she was going, made my blood run cold. I couldn't help it. I had to ask. "Are you really going to be late?" I said, my voice barely above a whisper. She nodded, a forced smile on her lips. "Yes, it's just a small get-together. I'll be back later." I didn't believe her, but I didn't press it. I let her go, watched her walk out the door, my heart sinking with each step she took. I wanted to call after her, to stop her, to ask her one more time where she was really going, but I didn't. Instead, I stood there in the doorway, watching her leave. Just the sound of the door closing behind her echoing in the silence of the house. And then it hit me. She was lying. I had no idea what would happen next, but one thing was certain. This night, this dinner, was the beginning of something I could never have imagined. As I stood there in the doorway, watching her car disappear down the street, I felt an overwhelming sense of dread wash over me. The air felt thick, charged with a strange, unsettling energy. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was horribly wrong, but at the same time, I wasn't ready to face it. Not yet. I stood there for what seemed like an eternity, the weight of her departure pressing down on me. I should have felt relieved, but instead, there was this gnawing emptiness, like I was losing her, without even realizing when it started. Maybe it was the way she'd avoided looking me in the eyes or the forced casualness in her voice. Something about it all screamed fake, but I couldn't pinpoint what it was. The house felt too quiet now, too empty. The clinking of my fork against the plate earlier seemed like a distant memory. I knew I needed to shake myself out of this, but my mind kept wandering back to her words, her actions, and the doubt that seemed to pulse in the air. What had happened to the woman I married? The woman who once called me her safe haven? Was this some kind of phase she was going through, or was it something worse? Something more permanent? I sat back down at the table, staring at the half-empty plate of food in front of me. The roasted chicken, once so fragrant, now seemed to mock me. I pushed it aside and grabbed my phone, my fingers trembling slightly as I unlocked the screen. I knew I shouldn't do this. I knew that if I started searching, I'd only dig myself deeper into a hole of doubt. But I couldn't stop myself. I needed answers. I opened the Messages app, and there it was. The notification that had been sitting there, ignored, just a few hours before. It was from her Maya, my wife. It was a text she'd sent me earlier, right before dinner. "I'll be back late. Don't wait up. You know how it is." I stared at the message, my mind racing. How it is? What did that even mean? There was no mention of the girls from work, no mention of the casual get-together she had claimed she was attending. Just that vague, almost dismissive line. It was as if she didn't even care to give me a full explanation. She didn't care that I was left here with nothing but questions. I felt my heart rate quicken. Was I overreacting? Was I just imagining things? I thought back to the conversation we had at dinner, the way she kept looking away, the way she had shrugged off my offer to stay home. If I was honest with myself, I knew it wasn't just tonight. There had been little things over the past few weeks, small cracks in the foundation of our relationship that I had chosen to ignore. The longer I sat there, the clearer the picture became. She'd been distant for a while now. But was she cheating on me? I couldn't bear the thought. She wasn't the type of woman who would do that. At least I didn't think she was. But still, the more I thought about it, the more my gut told me I was missing something. I needed to know for sure. The clock ticked on. I waited for her to return. The silence was deafening. And in that silence, I started to piece together the things I hadn't noticed before. The way she had been spending more and more time at work, the late nights she insisted on staying for extra shifts or meetings, was all adding up to something I didn't want to admit to myself. But that night, I couldn't deny it anymore. Something was going on, and I had to find out what it was. After an hour passed, I grabbed my jacket and decided to go for a walk. I needed to clear my mind, to stop obsessing over the endless questions swirling around in my head. The cool night air felt good against my skin as I stepped outside, but even the crisp breeze couldn't shake the anxiety that gripped my chest. I walked aimlessly around the block, my thoughts a tangled mess. Now, it wasn't long before my phone buzzed in my pocket. I pulled it out, my heart pounding in my chest. It was a text from Maya. I'm staying over at Lisa's place tonight. It's been a long week and I just need some space. I'll be home tomorrow. I froze, the words blurring on the screen. Lisa? Who was Lisa? She hadn't mentioned any Lisa before. The sudden mention of this new name only fueled the growing suspicion that had been festering in me all night. Was Lisa really just a friend? Or was this another lie? I tried calling Maya, but the phone rang and rang, unanswered. I texted her again, this time feeling the weight of frustration seep into my message. Why didn't you tell me about Lisa? Who is she? But the more I typed, the more I felt something inside me break. It wasn't just about Lisa. It was about everything about Maya. About the way she was treating me, about the way I had been blind to the signs for so long. The message went unanswered. I stood there in the middle of the street, the cold air biting into my skin as I struggled to process everything that had just happened. She had lied to me. I couldn't even be sure about what she was doing, where she was going, or who she was with. And then I remembered something else. There had been a name, another name, a whisper from weeks ago. Something Maya had said in passing, almost like it was nothing at all. I could barely recall the specifics, but the name Sam stood out. I had brushed it off at the time, thinking it was just a coworker or an old friend. But now, with everything weighing down on me, I wondered, who was Sam? A sinking feeling crawled up my spine, and I realized that I was facing something I wasn't ready for. A betrayal so deep that I could barely begin to comprehend it. I couldn't wait any longer. I had to know what was going on. I had to find the truth, even if it shattered everything I believed. I walked back home, my mind swirling with all the possibilities of what might happen next. But I had no idea what I was about to uncover. No idea that the woman I had loved, the woman I had trusted, was hiding a truth that would destroy everything I thought I knew. By the time I got back home, the house was still as silent as before. The front door had been locked when I tried to enter, and for a brief second, I wondered if Maya was already back. Maybe she was just trying to give me some space. Maybe she had just needed a break. But deep down, that nagging feeling I couldn't shake still sat heavy in my chest. I stood there, my hand resting on the doorknob, staring at the dark hallway ahead of me. I didn't want to do this. I didn't want to dive deeper into the mess that had started to unravel. But I knew I had to. I knew that whatever was going on, it wasn't going to stop until I confronted it. I stepped inside, locking the door behind me. The house felt even emptier than before, colder, as though it was haunted by the ghosts of secrets I hadn't yet discovered. I moved through the house mechanically, the familiar surroundings now feeling strange, foreign even. Every step I took led me closer to the room where we had once shared laughter and quiet moments, where we had built the life that had now begun to feel like a lie. I didn't want to be here anymore. I didn't want to look at the things she had touched, the places where she had been, but I knew I had to. It was then that I noticed her purse lying on the counter in the kitchen, the one she always carried with her. For a moment, I hesitated. I knew it wasn't right to go through her things, but the doubts clouding my mind made it impossible to stop myself. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for what I might find. I grabbed the purse and started sifting through it. There were her usual items: lipstick, receipts, a few hairpins, and some loose change. Nothing unusual at first glance, but as I reached into the smallest pocket inside, I found something that made my heart stop: a hotel room keycard. It was tucked neatly into a side pocket, the edges slightly worn, as if it had been used recently. The keycard was for a place not too far from our house, a boutique hotel I'd never heard of. My hands trembled as I pulled it out, my mind racing with the implications of what I was holding. I had no way of knowing for sure, but everything in me screamed that this wasn't just a coincidence. Why was she carrying around a keycard to a hotel? What could she possibly be doing there? The questions hit me like a wave, and suddenly I couldn't breathe. Was Maya seeing someone else? Had she been planning this for a while? I didn't want to jump to conclusions. I didn't want to assume the worst, but everything in me was telling me that this was a huge red flag. I needed to find out what was going on. I put the keycard back in her purse and walked to the living room, my mind spinning with questions I didn't know how to answer. Gosh, there had to be more to this. Maya was hiding something from me. something that ran deeper than I had imagined. I needed to know who was involved. I needed to know what she was doing. I picked up my phone and stared at it for a long moment. I didn't want to call her. I didn't want to push her into revealing the truth before I was ready, but I couldn't stand the silence anymore. I had to ask her, had to confront her. I dialed her number and pressed the phone to my ear, my breath shallow as I waited for her to pick up. It rang twice, then she answered. Hey, she said, her voice light, as though nothing was wrong. My throat tightened. Where are you? I asked, my voice coming out harsher than I meant. There was a brief pause before she responded, and when she did, her voice sounded strained. I'm still at Lisa's. No, I told you that already. Something in the way she said it didn't sit right with me. It felt rehearsed, like she was trying to convince both of us that everything was fine. You're still there? I repeated. It's getting late. You said you'd be home. I know, she said, her tone defensive now. But I just need some time, okay? I'll be home tomorrow, I promise. I could hear the distance in her voice, the walls she was building between us. And I hated it. I hated that I couldn't reach her, that I felt like I was losing her, bit by bit, and there was nothing I could do about it. I didn't want to push her too hard, not yet, but I had to know more. Who's at Lisa's? I asked, trying to sound calm, trying to hide the desperation creeping into my voice. There was a long silence before she answered. Just some of the girls. It's nothing. No, really. I could feel my frustration mounting. It's nothing. She had said the same thing earlier tonight, but it wasn't nothing. It was everything. Something was wrong, and I couldn't keep pretending it wasn't. I clenched my jaw, willing myself not to shout. Maya, you're not being honest with me. I need to know what's really going on. She sighed heavily, the sound of it piercing through the phone like a knife. I'm not doing anything wrong, she said, her voice tight. I just need some space. Can you please stop questioning me? Her words stung, but it was the way she said it so final, so dismissive that hurt the most. I didn't want to argue with her over the phone. I wanted her to come home, to face me, to stop hiding behind excuses. I'm not questioning you, Maya. I just want the truth, I said, my voice trembling despite myself. And there was a brief silence on the other end. Then she spoke again, her voice softer now. I'll be home soon. Let's talk tomorrow, okay? The line went dead before I could respond. I stood there in the middle of the living room, and the phone still in my hand, the silence so deafening I could barely hear my own thoughts. I felt like a fool. I had been so blind to the signs, to the distance between us, and now it was too late. Maya wasn't the woman I thought she was, and I was starting to realize just how far gone things really were. The night stretched on, a long, painful silence that seemed to wrap itself around me like a cold blanket. I sat down on the couch, my phone still clenched tightly in my hand, as if it might offer me some kind of clarity if I just held on long enough. I couldn't stop thinking about Maya's words. I just need some space. It wasn't the first time she had said that, but it was the first time it felt like a shield, something to hide behind rather than an honest need. For months now, she had been pulling away in small, subtle ways. First, it was the late nights at work, the girls' nights out, the sudden need to clear her head. I had tried to ignore it, tried to convince myself that everything was fine, that it was just a phase. But deep down, I knew I had been fooling myself. I looked around the living room, taking in the familiar sight of our home, the framed photos of us, our wedding picture hanging above the mantel, the little trinkets we had collected on our trips. It all seemed so fragile now, so fleeting. The life we had built together, the trust we had shared, it all felt like it was crumbling beneath me, piece by piece. Now, I knew I had to act, but I didn't know what to do. I couldn't just sit here and wait for Maya to come home. I needed answers. But where would I even begin? I couldn't keep going in circles like this, questioning everything and waiting for her to finally tell me the truth. My eyes landed on the keycard in her purse, the one I had found earlier. I couldn't let it go. It was a keycard for a hotel, a place I had never heard of. I knew I had to go there. I needed to see for myself, to confront whatever was going on. The idea of confronting her about it directly felt impossible right now, too much of a risk. But if I went to the hotel, maybe I could find something that would make all of this make sense. I grabbed my jacket and left the house. The cold night air hit me hard as I stepped outside, the chill cutting through me. But it did nothing to stop the turmoil inside my chest. As I drove through the quiet streets, my mind raced with 1,000 questions, each one more unbearable than the last. What was Maya hiding? Who was she seeing? Was she in love with someone else? The hotel wasn't far, just a short drive away, but it felt like an eternity. Each minute that passed made me feel more anxious, more desperate. When I finally arrived at the hotel, I parked my car in the lot and sat there for a moment, staring up at the building. It was a small, unassuming place, the kind of hotel you might find on the outskirts of a city. Nothing flashy, nothing special. But to me, it was the key to everything. It was the place where Maya had been, where she had left behind a clue, where she had been hiding the truth. I took a deep breath and got out of the car. And the night was eerily quiet, the only sound being the distant hum of traffic and the soft rustling of leaves in the wind. As I walked toward the entrance, I felt my heart racing. I wasn't sure what I was expecting to find, but I knew I had to do this. I had to know. The receptionist was an older woman, her face tired but friendly. She looked up from behind the desk as I approached, and I tried to keep my voice steady as I spoke. "Hi, I'm looking for someone who might be staying here," I said, my voice tight. "Her name is Maya. Maya Daniels." The receptionist glanced at her computer screen, typing in the name. "We have a Maya Daniels staying with us," she said slowly, her eyes flicking up to meet mine. "She checked in earlier today." I felt a wave of nausea wash over me. "Do you know what room she's in?" I asked, trying to keep my voice calm, but it cracked slightly at the end. The receptionist hesitated, her fingers hovering over the keyboard. I could see the uncertainty in her eyes, and for a moment, I thought she might refuse to give me the information. But after a long pause, she finally spoke. "Room 208, she said, her voice quiet. "But I'm afraid I can't give you any more details. It's against our policy to share that kind of information." I nodded, swallowing hard, the truth sinking in like a stone in my stomach. "Thank you," I muttered, already turning away, my mind reeling. Room 208. That was all I needed to know. I made my way up the stairs, each step feeling heavier than the last. When I reached the second floor, I paused for a moment outside the door of room 208, my hand trembling as I reached for the doorknob. I didn't know what I was hoping to find, but I couldn't stop myself. With one last deep breath, I turned the knob and pushed the door open. The room was dimly lit, the soft glow of a bedside lamp casting long shadows on the walls. The bed was unmade, the sheets tangled, but there was no sign of Maya, no sign of anyone. I stepped into the room, my heart pounding in my chest as I scanned the space, looking for anything that might give me a clue. Then, I noticed the faint scent of perfume in the air. Maya's perfume, the same one she always wore. It hung in the room, lingering in the stillness. I walked toward the bathroom, my footsteps echoing in the quiet room. The door was ajar, and as I pushed it open, I froze. There, on the counter, was a single crumpled piece of paper. My heart skipped a beat as I picked it up, and I was unfolding it slowly. It was a receipt for dinner at the same restaurant we had been to earlier that evening. But the name on the receipt wasn't Maya's. It was Sam's. I stared at the paper, my blood running cold. Sam. The same name that had been drifting through my mind all night. The name I'd overheard weeks ago. It was all coming together now. She wasn't just meeting friends. She had been with Sam. This was the truth I had been avoiding. I stood there for a long moment, my mind racing, trying to make sense of everything. Maya had been lying to me. She had been seeing someone else, and I had walked right into it. But there was still more to uncover. I wasn't done yet. The receipt trembled in my hand as I stood there in the dimly lit hotel room. Sam. The name echoed in my mind like a constant thrum, a relentless reminder of the betrayal I was facing. For a moment, I felt paralyzed by the truth staring me right in the face. The walls of the room seemed to close in around me, pressing down on my chest, making it hard to breathe. I wanted to leave, to run far away from the mess I had walked into, but I couldn't. I couldn't walk away without knowing everything. I folded the receipt carefully, my fingers still trembling, and tucked it into my jacket pocket. I stood there for a moment longer, letting the silence of the room wash over me. It was the kind of silence that pressed against your eardrums, the kind that made you question your own thoughts, your own reality. Sam. Maya had been with him, and now I had to face it. There was no denying it anymore. But I wasn't going to leave this hotel until I knew the full story. I couldn't. I took one last look around the room, my eyes scanning the space for any other clues, anything that could give me more insight into what had been happening behind my back. There was nothing obvious, nothing that screamed, "I'm cheating." No love letters, no gifts, no signs that would have been easy to find. It was all too clean, too perfect. Maya was careful. She had been careful with her lies, but now the truth was spilling out, piece by piece. As I made my way back to the hotel lobby, I couldn't stop thinking about Sam. Who was he? How long had they been seeing each other? Had she been hiding this from me the entire time? Was I just the fool? The one who couldn't see what was happening right under his nose? My thoughts were a whirlwind of confusion and rage, each emotion fighting for dominance in my mind. And when I reached the front desk, the receptionist looked up from her computer, her expression neutral as if nothing out of the ordinary had happened. But I wasn't fooled. I could tell she knew more than she was letting on. "Excuse me," I said, my voice calm but edged with frustration. "I need to know something. Is anyone still staying here with Maya Daniels? Is there a man with her?" Her eyes flickered briefly, but she quickly masked it, her face remaining expressionless. "I'm sorry, sir, I can't disclose that information." I wasn't about to back down now. I leaned forward, keeping my voice steady but firm. "I have a right to know. She's my wife." The receptionist hesitated for a moment before she spoke again. "I can't give you any details about her stay, but I can tell you that there was another guest with her when she checked in." My heart skipped a beat. "A man?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "Yes," she replied softly. "I can't tell you his name, but they checked in together. I saw them leave earlier tonight." I stood there, trying to process what she had just told me. It was the confirmation I needed. Maya wasn't just staying with her friends or having some quiet time alone. She had been with Sam. And from the way the receptionist spoke, it seemed like they were more than just casual acquaintances. I thanked the receptionist and left the hotel, the weight of the situation bearing down on me with every step. I had known something was wrong, but now I had proof. I had to face Maya, but I didn't know how. I didn't know if I was ready to confront her, to ask the questions I had been avoiding for so long. When I got home, I found the house as empty and silent as before. Maya still hadn't returned. I stood in the living room, the receipt still in my pocket, my mind racing with all the questions that were bubbling up inside me. How could she do this? How could she lie to me like this? I knew I had to talk to her, but I didn't know where to start. I couldn't just walk in and accuse her. I had to have the whole story, everything laid out in front of me. I needed to know when it started, why it happened, and if there was any hope of fixing this. But deep down, I was already preparing myself for the worst. I didn't know if she was still the woman I had married. I waited for hours, pacing around the house, the same thoughts running through my head. I could feel my patience thinning, the anger building with every minute that passed. But when Maya finally walked through the door, looking tired but composed, I knew the moment of truth had arrived. She had no idea what I knew. No idea that I had followed the trail she had left behind, piece by piece. She looked at me for a moment, as if surprised to see me still awake. Her eyes were guarded, and I could tell she was trying to keep her emotions in check. "You're home late," I said, trying to keep my voice steady, trying to keep the questions from spilling out too soon. "I told you I'd be late," she replied, her voice light, almost dismissive. I didn't say anything. I couldn't. My heart was pounding in my chest, and the words I had rehearsed in my mind over and over now felt trapped in my throat. Instead, I walked over to the counter and pulled out the receipt I had found earlier. Maya's eyes flickered briefly to it before she quickly looked away, her expression shifting slightly. "Explain this," I said quietly, my voice thick with the weight of the moment. She froze. For a moment, I thought she might deny everything, try to talk her way out of it, but instead she looked at me and I saw the guilt in her eyes. I didn't want to hurt you," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "I didn't know how to tell you." My breath caught in my throat as her words sank in. She was caught. She couldn't deny it anymore. "Who is he?" I demanded, my voice breaking slightly despite myself. Her eyes filled with tears as she looked at me, her gaze filled with regret. His name is Sam. We've been seeing each other for a few months now. Oh, I never meant for it to go this far. I didn't know how to stop it, and I didn't know how to tell you the truth. I felt like the ground had been ripped out from under me. Sam. The name I had feared, the name that had been a whisper in the back of my mind for weeks, was now a reality. How long? I asked, barely able to keep my voice steady. She hesitated before answering, her voice small. Since the beginning of the year, we got closer after a while. I didn't plan on it, but it happened. I stood there, unable to speak. The truth was out, and with it, everything I thought I knew about my life had been shattered. I had trusted her. I had loved her. And now, I had to face the reality of what she had done. But as she stood there, tears streaming down her face, I realized something. I had a choice. I could walk away, I could leave this all behind, or I could fight for what we had left. And right now, I didn't know which one was the right choice. The room felt heavy, like a storm was brewing inside of me. The silence between Maya and I was thick with unspoken words, the weight of the truth hanging over us. Her tears were a bitter reminder of what had been broken, but they didn't bring me any comfort. They didn't undo the betrayal, the lies, or the secrets she had kept from me for months. It was too much, too overwhelming, and I could feel the anger bubbling up inside me, threatening to spill over. But I had to control it. I had to hear her out. How could you do this? I finally asked, my voice barely a whisper. How could you betray me like this? After everything we've been through. Maya wiped her eyes, trying to collect herself. But I could see the guilt in her eyes, the shame that was written all over her face. She opened her mouth to speak, but the words seemed to get stuck in her throat. She took a deep breath and spoke again, this time quieter, more defeated. I don't know. I never meant for it to go this far. It just happened, she said, her voice shaky. Sam, he was there when I needed someone, and I thought I could handle it. I didn't want to hurt you, but I kept lying to you, kept pretending everything was fine. And I know I've messed up. I know I've hurt you. I stood there, my hands clenched into fists at my sides, fighting the urge to scream, to lash out. But I didn't. I couldn't. I had to hear her out. As much as I hated it, I needed to know everything, the whole truth. How long has this been going on, Maya? I asked. Oh, my voice cold. How long have you been seeing him behind my back? Months, she whispered. Since January. We were just friends at first. I didn't think it would go anywhere, but then we started getting closer. I started leaning on him more than I should have, and before I knew it, I was falling for him. The words hit me like a punch to the gut. Falling for him. That was it. The betrayal wasn't just physical. It was emotional, too. She had allowed herself to feel something for him that she should have been feeling for me. She had given him the part of her heart that should have been mine. You're telling me you've been in love with him? I asked, struggling to keep my voice steady. You've been in love with another man for months, and you didn't even think to tell me? Her head dropped, her gaze on the floor, unable to meet my eyes. I never meant to fall for him. It wasn't supposed to happen like that, but I couldn't stop it. And I couldn't tell you because I knew how much it would hurt you. I could feel the walls closing in around me, the suffocating weight of her words, making it hard to breathe. I had always trusted her, had always believed in the bond we shared. And now that trust was shattered, broken into 1,000 pieces. You should have told me, I said quietly, my voice thick with emotion. You should have told me the truth. Instead of hiding it, instead of lying to me. I gave you everything, Maya. I loved you. I thought we had something real, something that would last. Her tears started to fall more freely now, and she reached out for me, but I stepped back, not ready to accept her touch. Not yet. Not until I knew if she truly understood the gravity of what she had done. I'm so sorry, she cried, her voice breaking. I never wanted to hurt you. I was confused. I didn't know what I was doing. But now I see how much I've messed up. I see how much I've hurt you, and I'll do anything to make it right. Just please. Please don't leave me. Her words were desperate, pleading, but they didn't change anything. The damage had already been done. The foundation of our relationship had been cracked, and I didn't know if it could ever be fixed. I didn't know if I could ever trust her again. I stood there for a long moment, the silence between us deep and suffocating. I had to think. I had to make a decision. Was this something I could move past? Could I forgive her? Or had everything between us been irreparably broken? Maya, I started, my voice faltering. I don't know if I can get past this. I don't know if I can ever trust you again. You've broken something in me, and I don't know if it can be fixed. Her face crumpled with pain, and I saw the realization hit her like a wave. She knew it too. She knew that what she had done was unforgivable, that the lie she had lived for so long couldn't just be erased with apologies. I understand, she whispered, her voice barely audible. I've destroyed everything, and I don't deserve forgiveness. But I'll do whatever it takes to show you that I love you, that I'm sorry. Please don't walk away from me. I wanted to believe her. I wanted to believe that everything she was saying was true, that she could change, that we could rebuild what we had. But the truth was, I didn't know if I could live with this. No, I didn't know if I could keep looking at her the same way again. I need time, I said finally, my voice hoarse. I need time to think, Maya. I can't make any decisions right now. She nodded silently, her face a picture of sorrow and regret. I'll wait, she said softly. Take all the time you need. I turned away, walking slowly toward the door. I wasn't sure what the future held for us anymore, but I knew one thing. I couldn't keep living in this state of uncertainty. I needed space, clarity, and time to figure out if this was something worth saving. As I stepped outside into the cool night air, I felt a strange emptiness in my chest. I had loved Maya with everything I had, but now that love felt like a distant memory, fading away with each passing moment. I didn't know if I could find it again, but I knew I had to figure out who I was without her. And as I walked into the night, the weight of everything pressing down on me, I realized that nothing would ever be the same again.